The following program contains scenes and language of a frank and explicit nature. Viewer discretion is advised.
Shellshock, huh? Well, what is Shellshock?
Shellshock. Yes, I know it.
Pa, Shellshock? No such thing.
There have been many times that I witnessed Shellshock, especially in the lower ranks. We all thought it was nonsense at first, but as the war continued, the signs became ever more present. The most shocking case I ever saw was one that will stay with me till the day I die. It was a man, one of my own soldiers. He was laying on the floor, clutching his rifle, and, well, needless to say, he was quite mad. He was petting his rifle, and he had begun calling it a name, something with a C, Clara or Christina, something like that. Let's see. Yes, it was Charlotte. I believe it's Charlotte.
It's okay, Charlotte. It's okay. Everything's gonna be all right, Charlotte. Everything's gonna be all right, Charlotte. No worries. Yes. Everything's gonna be okay, Charlotte.
Well, sir, I saw many of my friends shell-shocked. The weirdest things I remember one year when he threw a birthday party every day, every goddamn single day. Poor soul. He ended up dying with a birthday hat on his head when he tried to get over the trenches. There have been so many of them. So many. I still remember once we were running through the forest, bullets flying all around us from every direction. When they finally stopped, the woods went quiet. The soldier beside me, disoriented as he was, ran straight to a tree. He was lucky to make it out with only a tooth missing.
Shellshock. What nonsense. Those cowardly soldiers are just that. Cowards. And cowards should not deserve the luxury of being pardoned on his duty to the very land that feeds him and gives him his work. A coward such as that should be sent straight, and if necessary he should be made an example to show the rest of the cowards that their actions will not be tolerated. Such actions should be met by execution by the enemy or even by one's own nation, which has been betrayed though such cowardice. In fact, I recall such an execution, one of the first. It was just one soldier, yet tried to run back to the trenches. He was tried and found guilty. His execution took place the following day.
For the crimes of cowardice and deserting your post, you've hereby been charged with death by execution. Are you ready to fire, soldier?
Yes, sir.
Fire on my mark. Fire!
Well, some cases I faced were genuine. perfect example was that the Charlotte incident, as we later referred to. But of course, there were a few examples that weren't so extreme. I remember that our snipers, they often lost their sight. I presume it was from shooting so many of the enemy and just the effect that has on you. But I remember that some of the soldiers would clench their stomachs as well when you asked them about how the bayonet was working. I mean, you could see some soldiers who were actively using their bayonet. Those were the ones that hit hard. I think the one that plagued many of them was the nightmares. Many of them, almost every soldier, would wake up just suddenly out of nowhere, and it happened about 10, 15, sometimes 30 times a night. But they would suddenly wake up and scream. They couldn't stop screaming. It happened in conversations too, but the nightmares, I think, were the worst. However, for every genuine case of shell shock we had, there was at least one coward. The cowards, they always wanted to use it as an excuse. Every day I had soldiers complaining about shell shock. Yes. They thought that it could get them out of active duty. As if. I generally sent them to go see the field doctor, and he almost always denied any signs of shell shock.
Sir, I feel like I'm shell shocked. I can't take this any longer. It's too much.
Nonsense, soldier. You're just a coward.
Sir, I know very good myself. I'm not a coward. You see me all through those battles. I've been in the biggest battles of history. I've been through all of them. I survived them. I always got back by team. You know, I have to. I can't take this no longer. I have a really bad feeling. Really bad feeling.
Soldier, if you were shell-shocked, you wouldn't know you were shell-shocked. You'd be delirious, like that man over there. He's clutching his rifle.
Sir, I'll have you know, my mind is still clear. I might be confused, but my mind is still clear. I don't know very well what I'm feeling. I can't even feel the words anymore. It's just too much. Well, if you want me to stay as sharp minded as I was before, and be the soldier I was before all these years.
Nonsense, soldier. You know what? Go see the doctor. If he diagnoses you with shell shock, I'll send you home.
I personally haven't been diagnosed with shellshock yet, so I went to the doctor, but he said it was just nerves. He gave me 2 days rest and said it would be enough, that I shouldn't concern, and that it's just some trivial matters. I shouldn't concern with such trivial matters, that's what he said. I've been lucky there. The last many of my comrades mad. I remember the one time. It was terrifying. It was next to him. Sorry. It hurts to think about it, sir. He was right there, and I couldn't do nothing for him. 1 second he was there, the next he had a bullet through his head.
I can't take this anymore.
No, man.
I've said it before and I will say it again. This shock business is a load of nonsense. Those soldiers only look for a way to avoid the war that is so very important for their country's future and their freedom. There are only two reasons for absence of duty: death or some sort of debilitating injury, in which case they weren't a very careful or good soldier. To die an honorable death is far more rewarding than to be brought out of the glorious Great War on a stretcher. Like that one man, Private and so, he was shot through the spine, couldn't move his legs anyone, the idiot.
The reason? Well, that's pretty obvious. The name even suggests it. The constant shells are the reason some of the men go mad. Of course, the war itself is quite the horror and most would want to forget it. But if they wanted to, I'm sure they could. And if they tried hard, I believe that they could forget it, or at least shut it away, those memories. The reason they went mad was the constant shelling. It was the reason they couldn't forget. Day and night, always the same thing. The terrifying part was when everything was quiet. See, because then everyone was on high alert, waiting for the sound of an incoming shell. Sometimes there were many, other times they just sent one or two to discourage a child. I remember sitting in the trenches, always keeping an ear open for that whistling noise, distinct noise that signaled an incoming shell. And every time they hit, the ground shook. Eventually, you get used to it.
Well, I think it's the war, sir. The horrors you face every day, they were just enough to drive any sane man to complete insanity. The shelling, the gas, it was all we could do not to run from our posts. Almost every day, we had one man who had been amputated or had been shot to death. There were some cases where I was physically scarred with a bullet. It tore the top of his head clear off. It was quickly removed from the soldiers, so apparently because of the moral and we couldn't get scared of it, but these pictures, you will never forget them. But the worst was watching someone die and knowing we can't help them. I do remember that one gas attack. The charges. better definition of madness. Not only being subjected to enemy fire, but our own as well. No matter where we are, it is guaranteed to be a shelter nearby. I was nearly hit by one. I was lucky that the shrapnel missed me. And of course the tactics. I don't know who came up with them, but charge and don't turn back. It's not a great strategy. The officers just order themselves to be an unavoidable death. It could be they don't know any better, but they have no choice because they receive orders from above. But if they can't tell that something is just pure suicide or can't make their own decisions, without the influence of someone higher up the officer should not be allowed to treat any army of men whose lives they endanger every single time they make a decision or convey an order. I'm just lucky to have lived through it all.
All right, soldier, on my mark, in charge.
This is madness. You know that it's order.
This is an order, soldier. I will not back down from this. Do not get a court-martial. When I say go, you charge.
Damn it.
All right, soldier, on my mark. You ready? When I say go.
Damn it, okay.
Go!
I believe that there is no war-related causes for neurosis that could explain the alert sightings of madmen on the front. Any man that comes back loony is either faking in his feeble attempt to get out of serving in the military or was already mad and belongs to a loony bin. I do, however, believe that officers can get a little stressed and overworked when having to deal with our sad excuse of an army. For this reason, they should be given the time to unwind and get ready to lead their men to glory again. No more than that.
How to treat Shellshock? That's a good question. Personally, I believe that you need some rest and recuperation. Having someone to guide you through the horrors and set you straight again is just the thing you need when it comes to Shellshock. In fact, I became rather stressed with the shelling and all, having seen a few men blow up and before my eyes. That didn't help either. Long story short, I received some time off and was sent to a hospital where I was able to talk and write about my experiences. Soon after, I was able to return back to the front and command my unit. Rest really is the best medicine.
Although I never really understood what Shellshock truly felt like, and therefore I hadn't experienced any treatments, I still think I have an idea of what the perfect treatment would look like. Probably it is best for the soldier just to be removed from all this constant war, the battlefield, the stress that is coming with the constant fighting And death, it is not just simply sitting in the trench. It is way more than that. It's all the other factors. Death becomes your best friend because you have to get used to it, and maybe that one bullet would be the most relieving thing that would probably happen to you in such an atmosphere. They would just send us home. I remember when I got home after the war, it was so refreshing. I think 10 times the man I was before I was glad, yeah. I started to be thankful in life, grateful. The countryside feels so calming. But it's so nice to be back home. And I just have a few people to talk back to about the war, bring back all those memories.
It is great to be home.
I strongly believe that our soldiers lack discipline. Even though we train them and we fit them, they have no respect for us, their superiors. If a soldier complains about shell shock, I don't want him in my proud army. A coward like that. They just need to be set straight quickly and in whichever way is quickest.
Get yourself together, soldier.
All in all,
It comes down to the definition of
Shell shock.
as officers, we've all been discouraged at one point or another by those who outrank us to acknowledge the term shell shock. But after all I've seen, it's nearly impossible to discredit it as a serious condition. See, the essence of shell shock lies in the neurological effect it has on the soldiers and the officers who I spent my time with. The constant shelling and the stress. Yeah. They're what I believe causes shell shock and are insured to the very basis of its definition. Shell shock to me is the strain and the fatigue that is caused through constant exposure to situations in which you fear for your life. And where all that surrounds you is the sound of battle. For everyone has a breaking point. No matter how courageous a soldier has or was, his mind could only take so much. For most, it was not a matter of if, but rather a matter of when. And those who were killed, they were the lucky ones.
Shellshock was a collection of the horrors of times and the experiences every day. Being surrounded by death and gunfire, never knowing when you will lay the corpse lying there beside you. It's something no man should ever have to face, and it collects all in your head. Soon it becomes a tidal wave of madness, and when it finally sweeps over you, it's too late. You've gone beyond the point where you can be pulled back and saved. You can't find others outside the war to relate to. No one can even comprehend the feeling unless they have within themselves. A wound like that, that is inside your head, cannot simply be healed, but it can be avoided.
Shellshock is a hoax. There is no such thing, and I'm not willing to accept any false evidence that proves its existence. The nerve of the people who insist it is real, they dishonor our army, they dishonor our laws, they dishonor our fallen. They have the audacity to give the cowards and the law lives who warm their way into our proud forces a way out. And those doctors releasing the reports only serve to lower our troops' morale with statements such as "Shellshock is the loss of sight, memory, etc., resulting from psychological strain during prolonged engagement in warfare." Do they understand that we are fighting a war and that our great nation's integrity is at stake? Can they not comprehend that trust in our army's mental strength is translated into the trust we have in ourselves, and that without it we are nothing? It's because of them that our great nation is doomed.